Thank you for joining A Shark's Perspective, the podcast with subject matter experts in marketing. If you've ever considered shifting from a product-based strategy to a content-based strategy, well, then you're kind of talking about a pretty large shift in strategy. But by doing so, how can marketing make a bigger impact on the business, and can you do that at a large global company? Ryan O'Neill is the Director of Global Marketing for Audience Engagement and Nurture Strategy at Citrix, and he's a subject matter expert at content marketing. And on this episode, we'll discuss strategy and leveraging content marketing on a global scale, how marketing and sales work together, and how we should always be delivering value throughout the customer journey. So let's tune in to a global content marketer with a global shark on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. Ryan, thank you so much for joining us on A Shark's Perspective today. Please tell us a little bit about your background and your story thus far.
Yeah, well, I actually started my career in the agency, working at a couple of different agencies with a variety of clients. So it was kind of a good crash course, if you will, for just marketing, demand marketing, and really understanding the importance of audiences and who we're trying to reach. And so I took that knowledge and then transitioned into kind of client side, where I worked with a small Austrian-based technology firm, actually led their America's marketing, and did everything from brand to product marketing to analyst relations and so forth. So it was, again, kind of building off that agency experience and a variety of responsibilities at that company. And then as I developed my career, kind of moving into larger organizations, but becoming more focused on field and demand marketing. So closely tied to sales, closely tied to regional teams, field teams. And I did that at Sun Microsystems and then transitioned it to SAP, where I was there for about 6 years in North America marketing role. And then recently joined Citrix about 2.5 years ago, where I was brought on to lead and execute a audience and content strategy, and did that successfully. That's in motion, and I think we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then was asked earlier this year to transition that kind of a strategy into a nurture and marketing engagement strategy. So kind of building on the audience and content strategy and understanding how that would affect how we approach nurture and marketing engagement. So that's where I'm at.
Out of curiosity, was it an interest for you to transfer from sales to marketing, or was that just sort of a natural progression, or vice versa? Or, I mean, a lot of people don't make that true shift, or they do a blended role where it's heavy sales, but you've been full marketing for quite a few years. I'm just curious how that developed.
Yeah, and really the bulk of my experience is on the marketing side.
Yeah.
I call it sales focused marketing. It's really it was not a corporate marketing role, and it's very closely tied to the sales team. So a lot of organizations call it field marketing, but I just like to say sales focused. The point is, when I engage in marketing programs, as part of my responsibility, it's directly tied to how do I drive business for the field sales team.
Yeah.
So it has always been in marketing. With that said, I did carry a bag for a little bit and realized that wasn't my cup of tea. There's a special person that gets to do that, and that wasn't me.
Yeah.
So I continued developing my career in marketing.
Well, you work for a massive tech company now, and I think the topic of the day is really looking into how do you transform a B2B, basically marketing department, from a product-based strategy to a content-based strategy, because that is a massive and major shift that will affect a lot of sales.
Yeah, it really, I think that's a key point. That was the objective, is to understand how marketing can make a bigger impact on the business. So, so when I started, really, there's two key things, and this is, I've really pitched this all along, is let's understand the persona and the journey. So let's understand the audience, and let's understand the path that they typically take. This is sometimes referred to as a perfect path, but really the reality is you can't document a journey for a prospect and every one of them will go through that same journey. So really, I think it's kind of a neat time right now too, where we have technologies like machine learning and artificial intelligence that is really making it possible for us to deliver the perfect journey. It's not us documenting or dictating it. It's actually the machine and using its intelligence to deliver the right content, the right time, the right channel, and all that stuff we know. But that's the key part, is developing and understanding the persona in the journey at a high level, and then operationalizing it. That's actually the part where I think sometimes can be overlooked when we work on personas at the global or the corporate level. The reality is these things don't happen. Like the field and the regional teams, they don't adopt it until it becomes
Oh,
operationalized,
right.
in the sense
Right.
that it's in the systems.
Sure.
So a lot of what I did is really driving, okay, we have the research, we have the personas, we have the journeys. Now we need to operationalize them, get them into your Salesforce automation system, get them into your marketing automation system. Don't let it be a PowerPoint that sits in the internet somewhere. Make it actionable.
So you brought this up earlier, and it's a great point. On the customer journey is not a linear path for any persona or any one person, but does this change the strategy around the customer journey, throughout the funnel, and how does it change it?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely does. So, one of the things is, if you really, you have to look at where you want to be. If I want to be delivering the right content to the right person in the right channel at the right time, what is that? What do I need? What knowledge or information do I need to do that? That's why you start at the persona, and then you build the journey, and then you start to develop the content recommendations. Those are all based on priorities of what are we trying to communicate, where do we have opportunity in our key audiences, where do we have relationships that we can leverage, where do we have opportunities to build relationships. All of those things play into what kind of content do I want to deliver. When I say this, I'm not trying to drive somebody through a journey. I'm trying to support the journey that they're on.
Right.
So if I can put them first, understand them first, and then carry them through. And actually, there's another key point of this is, if I'm not delivering value at every touch point, and I know I'm not saying anything that's rocket science or anything like that, but if I'm not delivering value at every touch point, then I'm giving that person, that individual, an opportunity to go find that information somewhere else, to get value somewhere else. So I believe that marketers, especially in this content, in this audience approach to marketing, we have a really strict responsibility to deliver value at each touch point. If we're not, we're basically giving our potential prospects or customers an opportunity to find it somewhere else. And it's too easy to find information somewhere else. So we have to keep adding value, and then that builds, and I've said this to salespeople too, they want people to prefer us. We have a key responsibility and a key opportunity to encourage and to drive that kind of preference with our audiences at every time we have an opportunity to get in front of them.
So then, how should someone look at a content strategy that plays to a global audience rather than just a regional, audience inside the U.S.? I mean, I think a lot of times we get so lopped into thinking maybe our expansion efforts are to Canada or so, maybe Mexico, which
Right.
is obviously very westernized. But Citrix is a major company that's got operations and sales all over the world. I mean, how do you answer that audience, whether they be in Peoria, Paris, or Bangkok?
Yeah. You know, the, I mentioned this a little bit before, but the key thing is that we need to understand the sales strategy
Mm-hmm.
and the sales objective, the goal of the region, if you will, because really what we're trying to do is support the sales organization to drive business with that particular contact. I mean, when you think about it, there are a lot of different ways to influence a sales opportunity, and there are a lot of people who are in the buying decision and all of that. If we look at our key audiences, these are the people who we're really trying to drive to a conversation with sales. That's the best way to kind of look at this. So when we engage them in a content strategy or with content through marketing tactics and activities, we're trying to drive them to a point where they're ready to talk to a salesperson. if we take out the factor of what the sales team is trying to accomplish, then we miss that connection. I go back to like this sales focused approach to marketing. This is so important because the the sales organization in these different regions may have different goals completely. So you start to wonder then, how do we develop a persona or journey or something like that at let's say the global level, and how do we make that actionable by these teams in different countries or in different field organizations or regions. Understanding, we have to set a framework. We have to set the overall approach, and we have to understand how to operationalize that information in our systems. From there, the regional teams can actually drive a more focused approach on the audiences that they're looking to engage with, and we can support them with additional research, or they can do research locally. But understanding the goal of the sales organization, and then looking to understand how our marketing, our tactics, our content mix can drive the behavior they're looking to drive. That maybe I want to have sales meetings with a particular audience, the CIO. That's a different content strategy. Then I want to drive awareness across my region of a new product that we're driving. That's a completely different content strategy.
Sure. So when you also look at expansion, let's say you start doing business in a new country, how does someone go about expanding that content strategy to a global audience outside of the US? I mean, let's say you pick a new country. Where do you start with that expansion outside of what you currently work with, that current, geographic domain you're working with?
Yeah, the first one is to understand if the personas that we have currently, so the
Right.
global personas, match the target audience that we're trying to reach in that new market. If if yes, and we'll assume for the example here that it does match, then we have to look and say, does the persona, the way we've defined it, or does the audience, is their behavior similar? If it's similar, then you go down to the next level and say, okay, what are we trying to accomplish in this market? This is the go-to-market strategy. So are we trying to just generate awareness and consideration? Is it a highly competitive market where we have direct competitors that we want to call out and go head-to-head with? Are we trying to use a relationship-based sales model where it's not so much about the messaging, it's really more about the organization and how we partner with that audience? So that understanding that go-to-market strategy and the kind of the sales approach, and then understanding the sales relationship with those prospects and customers. There are, having been in a global role now, there are uniquenesses, particularly in certain places in the EMEA region and in the APJ region, where a lot of the business is really relationship-driven business. So in that sense, do we have the right level of understanding of the audience when it comes to that relationship side of the business, and not so much their technical role or the firmographic, demographic type of information you might have in a typical persona. There's also one other factor, and something that we built into our persona approach too, is this emotional component to personas. So what makes them tick? Is this particular group of people, this persona, are they in an earlier stage of their career where they're looking to really make a name for themselves and look for innovative projects? Or are they at maybe the later stage of their career where they're wanting to make sure that they leave things, prior to retirement or so forth, they leave things in good order before, they decide to move on to retirement and those kinds of things. So there's different emotional things that can go into understanding that audience. So that becomes kind of a bigger factor, I think, when you really look at the regions and the different market segments and different areas you want to pursue, because those details can really drive a different approach to how you engage with those audiences. So that and all of that said, so personas, do they match? Do we have overlap? Are they representative? Do they support the market strategy? Do they support the sales relationships and the goals of the sales team? All of those things play into how much the regional team the local teams might need to adjust or supplement um, the corporate personas and journeys.
So how do you look at this from a macro level? I mean, are you looking country to country? Are you looking Asia versus Europe, or larger region to another larger region? Some of the things that you typically consider country to country, or larger region to region?
The two things that I would say, at the, let's say, the development of the personas and journey, we're really looking at regional differences. So do these do these personas and do the journeys represent um, each of these audiences, and do we have agreement at the regional level, so
Mm-hmm.
EMEA, for example. However, when you really start to get into activating them, which is why I really think that there are two key functions here. One of them is development, the other one is activation, operationalizing these things. Then you get into language and localization requirements. So you really start to say, okay, if we know that the core critical pieces of content for this particular audience are these three types of offers, these three offer types, then do we have the resources? Um, do we have the funds? Do we have the time to localize each of those and create the required language versions? So that's a big factor, is language and localization. A lot of times that happens at the regional or country level. So while in a corporate or global role, we may have the structure for all of this. We have the structure for personas. We have content already developed in English and so forth. Um, a lot of that investment happens at the regional or the country level. And then the other factor is the sales model and the resources. So again, we're trying to drive conversations for sales.
Mm-hmm.
So if we drive conversations for sales with this, let's say the CIO, which is a big thing, is how do we, a lot of companies, not just Citrix, a lot of companies I've worked for are saying, how do we have better conversations with the CIOs? That is a very unique relationship, and that requires not only a different content strategy, but also requires some relationship component that needs to be supported. So do you have the right sales model in place? Do you have the right resources in the sales organization to continue that conversation through? If you don't, then you should really consider how you want to approach that audience. So those things are happening, I think, not so much at the global level, but really at the regional field level, where kind of the rubber meets the road, right?
Right. From a global scale, what have you seen when you compare it to the local regional efforts that may be of interest to the audience, of how you take content marketing to a global scale and really see success from it?
So there's two big things. The first one is just performance. When we have alignment across personas, the content that supports the journey, and we can operationalize that, and that's another thing. A benefit of operationalization is being able to then report on your performance. So
Sure.
so when we use the right content in the right channel, what does that look like? If you don't operationalize the personas, then you really don't have any data to work off of anyway. But so what I found is it improves the entire, let's say, the marketing funnel. This is from email open rates to click to open. So there's a couple key metrics that I like to pay attention to.
Mm-hmm.
Open rate is something that, are we getting to the right people through the right channel? So this is email specific, but is this the right channel? Are we speaking to them, at least from a subject line and preview text line standpoint? Are we speaking to them relevantly? Once they open it, are they clicking on the content? So we've got them to open. Now, are they actually interested? Do we deliver the right content or offer, let's say, the right offer to them at that particular time? If we do, then we get a click to open, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they actually move forward. And then the other factor with email in particular is the unsubscribe rate. And there's some other things that you can do. You can look at some of your web activity, and if they're just missing messages like web personalization type messages, that's kind of considered an unsubscribe rate, if you will. It means I'm telling you specifically I'm not interested in that. So unsubscribe is another another factor. So we look at all three of those metrics. Those are all improving: higher open rates, higher click to open rates, and lower unsubscribe rates. But then we're looking at the lead funnel itself. So once we get them to consume a piece of content, to fill out a form and become an interaction in the system, or whatever you want to call it, are they progressing forward? And we're finding also that the conversion rate from an initial form completion to a qualified lead is higher, and the velocity is actually faster. I should say a shorter time period. So all of this is saying we're engaging better through the earlier kind of part of the marketing funnel, and we're converting better on the back end. We're converting higher. We're converting a larger number of contacts into qualified leads, and we're doing it at a shorter amount of time. So we're actually accelerating the journey.
Mm-hmm.
We're accelerating the time it takes to get to a conversation. So those things are awesome. The other thing, and this is less kind of data driven, but the other thing is just alignment between global, field, region. Because we established a persona in the journey, because we've established and operationalized it in the system, there's no question as to who does what and where. If they're looking to approach and drive a marketing program in a specific country to a particular persona, they have all the data available. They go in the system, all of our Salesforce automation, our marketing campaign structure, all of that stuff is built around this model. So when they start to execute, they're executing specifically against the strategy that was put in place. So that alignment is really important also. There's no question when I get on a call with somebody in a regional or a field role, there's no question who we're trying to reach, what the themes are, what the journey looks like. All of that stuff is available. We're in agreement, and it's being executed against.
Ryan, what do you see if you had to look in your crystal ball? How is global content marketing going to evolve?
I think it's really going to just become more of a machine-driven engagement. I mean, the reality is, as much as we can define how people are going to move through the journey, and as much as we can define the next best offer ourselves as humans, I think the reality is that behavior is going to tell us more than anything else. This is another thing that I think is, honestly, I'm personally spending a lot of time in. So I mentioned machine learning and artificial intelligence, but also understanding where we can capture signals. So
Yes.
data, behavioral data. This doesn't just sit within our own systems. This actually is everywhere. You could go, and the beauty of it, I guess the opportunity here too, is for marketers is, while we think data that exists in somebody else's system is kind of off limits, like, well, there's a lot of good behavioral data in that company's system, like Amazon or whoever. We think, oh, that's off limits. The reality is data is a revenue source for companies now. They're realizing that they can monetize their data. So they're sitting there going, I wonder who would benefit from this data. I literally just had a call 2 days ago. A company that I worked with a number of years ago reached out and said, hey, we're basically now selling our data. Would you like it? And I'm like, hey, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So you start to look and go,
especially with the advent of a lot of these CDPs as well.
Yes. Yeah, very true. Very true. So you look at that and say, how can I take that data, feed it into the machine, into the stuff I already know, stuff from my own systems, marketing automation, my Salesforce automation, all that stuff. How can I then supplement with third parties? So we do this sometimes. We've got intent data from different organizations. I won't list their names and stuff, but you probably know who I'm talking about. So you have data from there, but what about the next level? What about your partners? Like you mentioned CDPs. What about your partners or their partners? Or what about your customers who are turning around and monetizing their data? So it just really, it becomes a data strategy. Boy, I can't believe I haven't said that yet so far on this discussion, but it becomes a data strategy as marketers. How do we become better data people? And how do we use the data, the behavior, the signals, all of those things that people, when they do something online or when they engage with a company or when they become a customer of another company, how do we use all of that as fuel for the machine to basically indicate how best to support that person in this particular conversation?
Amen. Well, Ryan, we've We've come to that part of the show that you've been waiting for, that the world's been waiting for. Are you ready for the 5 most important questions that you're going to be asked today?
Wow, let's do it.
How's that for a setup? All right. Asking somebody in Dallas. So here we go. Dallas Cowboys or Houston Texans?
Dallas Cowboys.
Amen. Thank you. Global or local?
Local.
Content marketing or field marketing?
Ooh. Oh, my heart's in the field. I'm going to say field marketing.
And another Texas question. Black gold or Texas tea?
Texas tea.
And the most important question that you're going to be asked today is biscuits or cornbread?
Man, I would normally say biscuits, but if you've had good Texas cornbread, you have to go with the cornbread.
Yeah, I don't know. Biscuits and chili just doesn't work.
No, that's true.
So Ryan, where can people find out more about you, follow your thoughts and leaderships, learn more about what you're doing in content marketing?
Twitter's a great spot. I have a handle. It's Ryan Marketing 13, all one word. 13 is the number, 13 at the end. And then if you want to connect me on LinkedIn, I'm happy to accept those connections too. If you do me a favor and mention the podcast, so I know that we've had at least there's been a bit of a dialogue. It's not a blind request. That would be awesome.
Awesome. Ryan, good luck, and thank you so much for joining us today on A Shark's Perspective.
Perfect. Thank you for having me.
So there was my conversation with Ryan O'Neill, the Director of Global Marketing for Audience Engagement and Nurture Strategy at Citrix, and a subject matter expert at content marketing. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from my conversation with him. First, with content marketing, you've got to understand the personas in the audience. You've got to understand their journey and the path they take. That journey is not necessarily a linear path. Customers zig and they zag. So machine learning can help deliver the right content to the right person on the right channel at the right time. And when you look at supporting content at a global scale, it all boils down to the fact that you've still got to look at your audiences, because that will help how they will engage with sales. So keep in mind the strategy of each region's goals. Second, simple but important reminder with a customer journey. We should not be trying to drive someone through a journey. We should try to support the journey that the customer is on with the content they want and need. Look, we're simply trying to help them solve a problem, and what we have is an opportunity. It's not a right. Third, I especially love this point on delivering value at every touch point. Ryan said, so I believe that marketers, especially in this content and this audience approach to marketing, we have a really strict responsibility to deliver value at each touch point. If we're not, we're basically giving our potential prospects or customers an opportunity to find it somewhere else. And it's too easy to find information somewhere else. We have to keep adding value. Great point. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. It's been an honor for me to spend this time with you in order to discuss another one of the many components that makes up marketing today. And as a normal exercise in my own personal futility, I say to you, go Cowboys. And join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.